Welcome to Story Chats at Inspi Romance. I'm Elizabeth Maddrey, and I'm here with my two co-hosts.
I'm Narelle Atkins.
Uh-oh.
And I'm Valerie Comer.
We start again?
Yeah, we should start again. Let's do that again.
Did that freeze completely up?
Yeah, it did.
So you chose the right time to freeze at the very beginning.
All right. Take two. Welcome to Story Chats at Inspi Romance. I'm Elizabeth Maddrey, and I'm here with my two co-hosts.
I'm Narelle Atkins.
And Valerie Comer.
Liwen Ho is back with us again today to chat about Marriage of Convenience CCR. Thanks for joining us, Liwen.
Thanks for having me.
So, before we get to book recommendations, we have questions. We have conversation to have because I think Marriage of Convenience has some things that are worthy of good talk time. I see in reader groups that I look at that people don't often feel, well, there are a group of people who feel that Marriage of Convenience is not realistic in contemporary romance, that it's just something, you know, like on the Oregon Trail and your husband got killed by a bear and your wife died in childbirth because she had dysentery and so you band together to save the homestead kind of thing. But what do you think? Do you agree? Is there a good foundation for a Marriage of Convenience in modern day CCR? What do you think, Liwen?
I actually asked my reader group this question.
Oh, yay.
And yeah, most of them said it's not realistic. But one person did say she has a distant cousin who had a marriage of convenience. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Yeah. But I think the part about it not being realistic kind of makes it more interesting to read and write about.
Yeah, that's definitely true. That's definitely true. Valerie, what do you think?
I was thinking many of the basis for our stories are not realistic. They're fiction. And so that, we have to give ourselves a little allowance for that. Having said that, it's true that there were many more reasons historically where women were unable to protect themselves or whatever without a spouse. I had more words for that, but financial stuff as well. So there may be fewer like legitimate reasons currently, but I'm sure that they do exist. And fictionally, you can kind of pull, kind of get to that as well. And the other thing too, with divorce so readily available these days, I mean, I can see how people would go, well, we'll just do it for like 2 years and then it'll be fine and we'll just go our separate ways and it'll be no big deal. Whereas historically, that they were now stuck with that other person.
That's true. Cool. Narelle?
Well, I will confess, I do prefer Marriage of Convenience in historical romance and Regency and all those types of stories. So I will be the more of the skeptic when it comes to contemporary. But that said, it completely depends on the story. And so there are some Marriage of Convenience books that I really do love. And there are some that I'm just like, nah, that premise, nah, I just can't live with that. And I think in the general market, it's used in a very different way. Like I remember the old joke used to be in the romance writing circles that authors, when the move happened a couple of decades ago to introduce sexier scenes in stories, that there were many authors who would make sure the couples were married before any of that happened on the page and would justify including sex scenes on the grounds that they're married. So it's a really interesting topic, but we can get into more details on that later.
Okay. All right. I tend to agree it's not super realistic, but I still love it. I sort of see it as a little guilty pleasure trope because it is truly fiction, right? But but fun because there's a lot of fun things that you can do with a Marriage of Convenience trope that you can't really do with best friends or, your brother's best friend or any of the other more typical tropes. So as an author, I like it. And as a reader, if it's done well, there are some setups that I've read that I'm like, no, you could have gotten around a marriage of
very true.
convenience with like
Yeah.
a phone call. So, but yeah. All right. So in contemporary marriage of convenience, what are things that you love to see in the book? What are you looking for in there, Liwen?
I think they're just fun because there's so many different layers of tropes involved. So there's like a forced proximity, or they're stuck in the same house, maybe in the same bedroom, and also kind of like a fake relationship as well.
Yeah.
So I think it just creates so much tension. Also opportunities for like physical closeness and physical chemistry.
Yeah.
So I think all those layers just really makes it so much more different than like just, like you were saying, just another kind of trope that's very one-dimensional.
Yeah, for sure. Valerie?
Yeah, that's kind of what I put down too. They're fun because of the forced proximity and the slow burn. They may or may not even know each other at the beginning, may have just, very passing acquaintance, or they might know each other quite well. That happens often too. But they tend to have a much closer relationship than most dating stories, where they could go out of their way and not run into each other for a few weeks, and that's not going to happen in a marriage of convenience. They're forced to deal with stuff whether they want to or not, including figuring out the bedroom logistics, because invariably there's somebody comes over and would notice if they're not sharing a room. So
Narelle?
Well, I always look at marriage of convenience as being part of the fake relationship trope. It's like a sub part of that. And so what I'm looking for, if a fake relationship is going to move into marriage of convenience, is an extremely compelling reason for why these people need to be married. There has to be something on the line. If we don't get married, then something bad is going to happen to something we love, care about, need, want, or whatever. So if you can come up with that hook that is really compelling and fascinating, then you've got me with a marriage of convenience. Okay. But I've got to have that initial, I've got to get past the implausibility thing, and I've got to absolutely be with the characters and say, yes, you need to get married because of blah, blah, blah.
Cool. All right. Excellent.
Curious if we could make a list of the plausible reasons, because it seems to me like there's a very limited number of those. But
maybe
it may come out when we talk about stories.
I don't know. I think there's a lot of room for creativity in terms of the reasons for why. I think there's an endless number of reasons for why a marriage of convenience setup will actually work, but it really requires the author to dig deep and to really look at the characters, look at their deepest desires, look at what's really important to them, and work out how to blow the place up, basically. Your life is destroyed if this doesn't happen. And that's what will suck me into a story. That's what will draw me in, is looking for that.
Yeah.
I think you guys hit all the things that I look for. I liked that Liwen mentioned the chemistry, because I do think marriage of convenience, you have to have the chemistry. Sometimes, like with best friends or, a different kind of trope, you can, like enemies to lovers, you can get away with a little less chemistry. But I think for marriage of convenience, you need that chemistry there, because it's another thing, especially in Christian romance, where you have some good conflict and tension, because like technically we're married, right? So there's some fun you can play with, like to have some fun. I like that. All right, is there anything that you wish you could forbid every author on the planet from ever including in a marriage of convenience? Like, is there just something that you hate to see and wish you never had to read again, Liwen?
I actually couldn't think of anything, so I asked my reader group again. So my readers, several of them mentioned no divorce.
Okay.
Whatever happens, they would hope that the couple would, decide to work it out, even if they were just going to date at the end, but that they wouldn't get divorced, which I agree with. Yeah, that would be a very sad ending.
Yes, it would. It would. Valerie?
I didn't come up with anything for this one either. I have a big long paragraph for the next question though. So I'm good.
Narelle?
Well, I have something, and it tags in along to what Elizabeth said earlier. So I can't stand a marriage of convenience, particularly when the heroine says, "I'm never having sex with you at all." Like when there's no chemistry, no connection, I'm just like, this is a Christian romance and marriage is a sacred thing. Have you read the Bible? Why are you doing this if you have absolutely a dead set against ever being intimate with this person? And that to me is probably the biggest thing that will make me toss a marriage of convenience, is that type of attitude in the story, for want of a better word. If there's no chemistry and there's no even that little 1% openness to possibly this could be real, this could be meaningful, this could be forever, if that's not there, then in a Christian romance, I'll toss it.
Yeah. So I am with Narelle and Liwen, or Liwen's readers. I really don't like when there's this assumption from the beginning of, oh, well, we'll just do this for 2 years and then get divorced. Like a divorce is a foregone conclusion, which ties into the idea that you're just ruling out that it could ever be real. Especially in Christian romance, because, for as accepted as divorce is just across the board, culturally and in the church, like there's no difference. That makes me sad. It is a serious thing to be married. And so if you're even with marriage of convenience, I do think that, you need to be willing to go all in and not look at it as a Band-Aid with a 2-year exit plan or something.
Yeah.
So that's my big pet peeve.
Because typically those stories could just be a fake relationship.
Yeah.
They don't need to get married. That's where I get stuck on the difference. And so why are you adding a marriage of convenience when a fake relationship will cover off what you need to cover off in terms of the story?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. All right. So Narelle alluded to it and Valerie mentioned she has a big paragraph for it. So our next question is sort of addressing the elephant in the room. And I mentioned, sort of alluded to it too, is Christian romance in general, typically, as opposed to sweet or clean, has an element of sexual tension, but abstinence inside of it, because of a decision that the characters, your Christian Bible believing characters, have made to live in the way that God has asked us to live in the Bible. So in a marriage of convenience, though, they're technically married. So should this be addressed? How do you want it to be addressed? Or do you feel like it's something that you just sort of ignore? Like we talked about this when we did our episode on kissing, and sometimes how Christians sort of veer away from this idea of physical intimacy, and they just want squeaky clean romance with a kiss on your pale hand, and that's like the height of romance. But with marriage of convenience, I feel like we have to go there. So Liwen, what are your thoughts?
I'm kind of the squeaky clean type, but
all right, that's fair. That's fair.
I think it also depends on the storyline itself.
Sure.
Maybe I would expect more, at least internal thoughts that the characters would have if they were already maybe best friends, or even like if they were dating before. But if they were strangers and it was just,
sure,
yeah, very on the paper kind of thing, I wouldn't expect anything.
Yeah.
I mean, until maybe the very end, when things work out. But yeah, it's just, I would actually appreciate more of the kind of will they not kind of tension when they're discovering each other, and even like little touches or glances. I actually think that's more romantic.
Yeah.
But that's me.
No, that's good. It's good. All right, Valerie, hit us with your paragraph.
I think that there is one of the expected scenes in a marriage of convenience is that discussion where they're like, okay, yeah, maybe we can do this, but we're not going to have sex. Like it's convenience, right? It's not for that. And so I think that the conversation has to be somewhere. It's one of the scenes that seems to need to take place, whether it has that outcome or a different one. But also the finale of the usual contemporary romance is an engagement or some kind of a promise of a happily ever after. And so these people aren't getting engaged at the end of the story. I hate to break it to you, but they're already married, right? So this hint of moving off to the bedroom, for instance, would be the more appropriate finale, or something that shows even an after scene where you know that that they have in fact consummated their relationship.
Okay. Yeah. Narelle?
Well, I mean, I don't want the door open at all. And I think I've come across Christian writers who have said, well, sex in a marriage is beautiful, blah, blah, blah. It should be celebrated. And I'm like, nah, I don't want to read that on the page. And I don't think that most contemporary Christian romance readers want to read it on the page, or they'd be reading General Market, where they can find it everywhere on the page. So I think that the CCR needs to be a safe place where readers aren't going to be put into a situation where they're reading explicit material, for starters. So I'm happy for the door to be closed. And I think if I get to the end of a book and I don't think the door's been closed and something's happened, then I'm often frustrated by the story as well. So it's like it needs to happen at some point for me to be satisfied that they're genuinely not going to get divorced and go their separate ways, that they really are going to have a happily ever after. But it doesn't need to be highlighted. And if someone's pregnant at the end of the book, that's fine with me. And that's often one of the ways that stories will end as well. But please do not open the door.
No, I agree. I agree with that
sure.
for sure.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So I tend to agree that I feel like well, because again, I really like the chemistry. So I feel like there needs to be chemistry. And I do think that with Christians being married, you've removed the obstacle to following through on that chemistry. And it does then also complicate the idea that this is just temporary and we're going to dissolve it at the end. So I do like it from that standpoint. But again, like, I'm just as happy to have like someone whistling in the morning and then a conversation. You don't need to see any of it, right? You don't, no details on the page at all. I think it can be handled really tactfully, and still give the same, knowledge and fuzzy warmness that you would get, without crossing into titillating, because CCR should not titillate. That's just not the purpose.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah. Cool. All right.
Can I mention I think might be another way that you could kind of show the happy ending, which is what I've done before, is to include either an engagement or like another wedding at the very end, if you don't want to go to those bedrooms and stuff.
Yes, you could absolutely do like a recommitment, a renewal of vows, or with your family now, if you snuck off and got married, by Elvis, as for the convenient factor. There are absolutely, those are good ways for sure to do that. Yeah. Cool. All right, so books. Let's go books. Liwen, why don't you start us off?
Okay. So my first book, looking at my notes here, is Calming the Storm by Melanie D. Snitker. I really enjoyed it. It was written a few years ago, but basically what happens is that there were two characters, Brandon and Rachel. And it's interesting, but Brandon is actually Rachel's professor in college. So they didn't really know each other in the sense that, they were even friends. But once she dropped out, he did notice her. And then once she dropped out of his class, he kind of wanted to find out more about why. So the reason she dropped out was to gain custody of her niece after her sister and brother-in-law passed away. And the reason why she, had to get married was because, she didn't really have a stable job. And, she also was young, single. So the social worker was, kind of on her case. And there was also a I think the brother-in-law's uncle and aunt who were interested in taking care of the niece.
Okay.
So the professor stepped in, a God-fearing man, and he, offered to marry her. And then, also put her on his insurance along with the girl. So I think, whenever there's a kid involved in the situation, it's a pretty compelling reason. And it was also just really interesting to see her progression from not trusting anyone, because she actually grew up in the foster system. So she didn't trust anyone, and she didn't trust him, but she was desperate. So she eventually came to really rely on him, also his family, and it worked out.
Yeah.
And there was one line that I really, really was touched by. Let me see. So basically, when she confides in him that she was afraid of meeting people because they would always leave her, he said, "You don't need to be worried about meeting. You don't need to be worried about meeting someone if you know that they need you just as much."
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, "Wow,
That's nice.
Yeah. So I really enjoyed that.
Very good. Cool. I haven't read that one. And behind, Melanie has so many books. Like behind.
She has several Marriage of Convenience ones as well.
Yeah. All right, Valerie, what's your first one?
I am going to go with Hope for Family by Elizabeth Maddrey. The winner is this is
on my
from the Hope
list.
Ranch series. I left one for you, Narelle.
It's okay.
Tommy's ex is messing with him and withholding their daughter, Olivia. And one of the things I enjoyed about this is, yes, there's a kid, but the kid is a teenager, right? Teen?
Yeah,
I can't remember
13.
exactly.
Yeah.
But she's definitely not like a toddler. And so Tommy he doesn't know how to get better, like more access to his daughter's life. And so he blurts out that he's seeing someone, and then he has to make good on it. And so it starts out with a fake relationship, as we were talking earlier about layering tropes. And Jade is surprisingly up for that. But then you realize that Jade is feeling sorry for Olivia, because Jade never had a relationship with her dad at all, and she's spent years being really bitter about that. And so if she can make this kid able to have a relationship with her dad, then she feels at least she's not a complete waste of space in the world. She can do something useful for somebody else. And so she agrees to be the fake girlfriend, which rapidly turns into a fake fiance. And then the daughter is like planning their wedding, and she's like, so it just flips into a Marriage of Convenience, which was really quite fun. Beth, I really enjoyed how you did that.
Thank you.
So, yeah.
I had a lot of fun with that.
But she had compelling reasons, I thought, for choosing to go ahead. She didn't feel like she deserved happiness on her own anyway, but she could help this child. So that worked for me.
That one got away from me. It actually was never supposed to be a Marriage of Convenience. It really was just supposed to be fake relationship. But then Olivia came on the scene and kind of took over. And I'm like, well, I guess this is where we're going now.
Characters do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mine sure do.
Yeah. All right, Narelle, what do you got?
Well, I'm going to continue talking about Hope for Family because it really ticks the boxes on why a Marriage of Convenience can work in a contemporary, because he has just been like, I mean, this is book 5 in Hope Ranch, isn't it? So we've actually watched Tommy from the beginning of the series, and he's absolutely heartbroken that his horrible, awful ex is just doing everything she can to scheme and manipulate and block him from having access to Olivia. Like, they'll arrange a time and she'll change it at the last minute. He'll drive miles to meet his daughter, and then suddenly the exes said, no, it's not happening, and just all these games and all this stuff. And I really think that's very relatable in real life. There are not just men, but women as well, depending on how the custody situation's set up, that really are absolutely heartbroken over the fact that they have a former spouse or former partner who is blocking them from seeing their children. So this is a really deep, distressing need that he has. And so when he ends up with the fake relationship moving into a marriage of convenience, Jay just really sort of plugs into the situation his daughter's in because she relates to it, but it's a different context. She didn't know her father, but it had nothing to do with necessarily what her mother was doing. You can read the series to understand how Jade fits into it. But it just really made so much sense. Like he didn't really have another option. And even if he hadn't have blurted out that he had a partner when he really didn't, it still, I think, would have landed in the same place as well. Like it was the dominoes were just rolling where this was going to end up with him needing to find a spouse as soon as possible because his daughter's life is at stake in all of this. And she's 13 and she's not getting any younger, and he's missed out on all these years with us. So for me, it just really grabbed me by the throat, this story, and just really spoke of that sort of deep-seated need for parents and children to have relationships and stuff. And that's what I'm looking for in Marriage of Convenience. I'm looking for those really deep emotional needs that are being met by the marriage. And then it's not trivial and silly. It actually makes a lot of sense. It's very compelling.
All right, so my first one is Nothing More by Autumn Macarthur. And this is in her Love in Store series. And I just found this one. I didn't realize she was still writing in her Love in Store series because I know she's writing Chapel Cove books, but I found this one and I was very excited. So these are actually older people. I believe they're in their 60s. And they have had a long-standing marriage of convenience. They are British aristocracy. And well, she is British aristocracy. And so her family married her off to a wealthy American, sort of they needed money to keep the estate kind of situation. And so they had this marriage of convenience for years and years and years. They have one child. And then he kind of went his way and she stayed on the estate. They never got divorced, but he certainly hasn't been living as if he's been married while in Texas. And he comes back to England for their son's wedding, which they're having in the hospital chapel because the woman, whose name I did not write down, darn it, is very ill. And I believe she has cancer. She's doing cancer treatments and is not expected to live super long, which is why they're going ahead and having this sort of quick, not British aristocracy wedding just here in the chapel. And so it reconnects, and they're married, but now they're in a different place in their life. They're in a different spiritual place. They've both come to know Jesus over the course of their lives. And they're now at a place where they realize that they really do love each other and they want to make amends. And it's a really beautiful second chance inside the marriage of convenience. It was just really a beautiful story of restoration. I really enjoyed it a lot. Not your typical romance like at all, because they are older and they have all this history. But it just is a beautiful story.
And it's not really royalty romance either from the sounds of it. It just happens to be, yeah.
They're just like Duchess landed, which not like my American impression of it, just rich British, with a title of some sort and a family estate, but not related to the royals really at all. Just landed gentry kind of thing. Yeah. So it's not royalty at all, but it is, an estate that we could never afford. And that in fact, she could not afford. They needed the Texas oil money to continue to hold on to their land, kind of thing. Yeah.
Which goes back to the changes 100 years ago with how the taxation and everything worked.
Yeah.
Can I ask, was there a reason why he agreed to marry her?
Because he was a scrappy Texan from the wrong. He was buying legitimacy, basically. He had money, but not status and contacts in the areas that he needed. And so her family had those contacts. So it was a way for him to grow his business. Yeah. And get legitimacy. Yeah.
And did they ever address the child, like how that all worked out?
Yeah. I mean, not really. I mean, they didn't go back over a whole lot of the history, and the son is in his 20s at this point, or 30s, maybe 30s at this point, in the story. He left very shortly after the son was born, I seem to recall.
And the son would be born to keep the line going. So he has to inherit to keep all that going. So yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, and I think he was doing work overseas and was supposed to be coming back. There is a little bit of drama, and I do recall it's a little spoilery. They do address some of it, why he left in the first place. But it's not super angsty because it's all so far in the past, which is nice. But they did definitely both get something out of the Marriage of Convenience. There was a reason they were both willing to do it, to get started. So, yeah. All right. Do you have a second book, Liwen?
I do. It's one of my own.
Yay. Okay.
Okay. It's my second Spark Brothers book. It's a set in Spark. The main character is also named Brandon. And basically it's another kind of custody battle storyline where he and his old college friend, Bria, they reunite at a book signing because he's a romance author. And basically she has a son that she had out of wedlock many years ago. It's like 10 years later that they're meeting again. She never told him why she had left school. She was too ashamed. And he was, just thrilled to see her again, but she wasn't so much. So basically, long story short, her ex comes back into their lives and he wants to get married again, but it's more for show because he's running for office to be mayor, and he's just not a nice guy at all. So he's never been there for their son. Yeah, so she basically is willing to marry Brandon, and Brandon's more than willing to marry her. She was his first love, first crush, and he's been single, never actually dated. So, but he's just very willing to, give it all for her and for her son. So they do get married. Things work out in the end. And so I had it where they actually, spoiler alert, he proposes again. So for real. So
yeah.
I enjoyed that story. It's been a while since I read it, but I do remember enjoying it.
So did I.
Yeah. And it was a very believable setup because, again, what is it? I think it's the kids, right?
Yes.
You got to do what you need to do to protect the kids and give them the best leg that they can have for their life. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't think I've read a Marriage of Convenience with custody and kids that I haven't liked.
Yeah.
To be honest, I can't think of one that I tossed. So that's probably a good sign.
Yeah. Valerie, your second?
My second one, I've got a big list here, so I'm just going to go with one that does not have children in it. Okay. The Reluctant Groom by Kimberly Rose Johnson. It's part of her Brides of Seattle series.
Yeah.
So Ray O'Brien must marry or lose the business he is set to inherit from his grandfather. And he's poured his life into this, and this business anonymously supports his passion project, a kids charity. Yeah. So I guess there is kids.
There are kids.
Many kids. When his sister's best friend offers to marry him, he's like taken aback because he's never really noticed her. She's one of those shy background kind of people, and he's not. But then he discovers that, in fact, he doesn't even know where she works, and he finds out that she's working for that charity, that she'd be without a job. She doesn't know that she'd be without a job if he lost the business, but he knows. So he accepts her. He accepts her proposal. So that was a different twist. I mean, it's the same. You see it often, the inheritance thing.
Yeah.
but this was a little bit of a different twist with the secret charity in the
Yeah.
background.
I love
enjoyed
that
that one.
series. It's a
Yep.
good series. Yeah. It's fun because it's billionaires without she doesn't call them billionaires, but they are, he is a billionaire. So it's really fun. Yeah. Narelle, what's your number 2?
All right, my number 2 is The Cowboy's Convenient Marriage by Valerie Comer. So have I stolen one of yours, Elizabeth?
You did. That's okay.
But Valerie's smiling, so it's all good. So this is number 4 in the Saddle Springs series. And of course, this is Cowboys on a Ranch. And there's a bit of a theme with my books. I just worked out they both are cowboy stories with ranches. So there we go. We're having a Cowboy Marriage of Convenience episode courtesy of Narelle. So this one is also an inheritance one, but this is a different inheritance one because often the inheritance is after the person has passed and there's a will reading and it all comes out. But this one, there's great uncle, I think it's Howard, I think. Yeah. And he's been changing his mind on what he's going to do in terms of who's going to inherit his ranch. So we have Carmen and her 6-year-old daughter, Juliana. And I probably didn't even need to say she was 6 because all Valerie's children happen to be mostly around the age of 5 or 6. But she's adorable. Yes. And so Carmen ended up marrying, I think his name was Eric, and he's passed away. And so she's widowed and living on the ranch, and she's effectively running the ranch, although the great uncle's not convinced that she could actually run it on her own. So he's sort of like, well, you really can't inherit it, even though you have Juliana, who's has some kind of entitlement, because I don't think you can run it. And so there's now another second cousin with the same relationship that Eric had to the great uncle, and his name is Spencer. So he's a city slicker. He's grown up in Dallas, Texas, and he doesn't wear cowboy boots. He wears loafers, and he's very, very city-fied. And he's an accountant, I think, and his father owns a firm, so they're very financially well off. And he's been dating this girl for, I think, something like 3 or 4 years. And they're having a party. He's about to propose to her. And then he overhears her sisters talking and realizes that she's been cheating on him. And I mean, often people don't listen to idle gossip, but what things that the sisters said fit in with things that sort of like the pieces all join in the puzzle. Mm-hmm. And he's like, I got to get out of here. So he basically basically escapes from this party and just disappears off the grid and ends up in Montana at this ranch where he's going to work out what's going on with this inheritance thing. And so, of course, you can imagine how happy Carmen is to see him. And she's so not happy to see him. And then it all starts to go down, and they start to learn what's going on with the uncle and being indecisive about the will. And the attorney says to them, well, you know what, if you guys got married and if you, Spencer, were made power of attorney, then you could fix all these problems and you could both secure everything. And so they think, yeah, this is about the only thing that's going to work. Otherwise, we've got a whole lot of things that could go wrong. You could give this money to charity, etc. So off they go and get married. And I just really enjoyed this one. And it's got Juliana, who's adorable. So they always have kids in them, interestingly. But the whole premise of why they got married made a lot of sense as well. And there was also the fairness thing in terms of the relationships, both being second cousins, the same relationship to the uncle. And Spencer genuinely cared about Carmen and looking after her and taking care of her. And he really liked her. So he was there. If she had wanted a wedding night, he would have been there. Carmen was a bit slower on the uptake in terms of that, but there was that attraction was there as well. So this one had lots of that chemistry that we've been talking about that you really need to make a marriage of convenience work. So I really enjoyed this one.
Yeah.
Yay.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, that was on my list too. All of those things. So I won't add because
I'm too comprehensive.
It was perfect. So I'll go fast. Valerie's laptop battery is dying if she disappears, but we're going to try to go fast. I'm going to go fast and we'll wrap up fast. My last one is The Billionaire's Destined Bride by Mandi Blake. And Cole is a billionaire who just broke up with his girlfriend, who was just sort of using him as like an arm candy publicity hound. She's an actress. And he would like her to stay gone, but he also needs some good publicity. And Sophia has been basically second in command to her father at his company, the family company. She's, if not a billionaire, very wealthy in her own right because of her own work and her family money. But the father is looking to retire and is talking about putting her sort of wastrel brother in charge because he's a boy, because that somehow makes him better suited, even though he doesn't even come to work most days and has no idea. So initially, she and Cole agree to a fake engagement, sort of to provide some job security for her, hopefully, that if dad saw that, oh, look, because Cole's company was a client of dad's company, big,
That's a little tricky.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, look, dad, I've engaged to one of your big clients, you don't want to hose me because maybe he'll go elsewhere, kind of thing, trying to get her some job security. Plus then it shines up his public image a little bit as well, because he's got this, pretty young thing on his arm too now. And then they end up falling in love. They do get married. But it at that point, it kind of maybe doesn't count as marriage of convenience, because they fall in love and they both have qualms about the idea of a marriage of convenience or a fake relationship, because they don't necessarily want to make a mockery of things. And they end up falling in love with each other before they actually follow through on anything being fake. So which I kind of liked, because they asked all the questions and they came up with answers that made them say, you know what, let's not do this for fake. Let's just do this for real. Which I liked. But I still think it kind of counts, because that was sort of the idea behind
That's where it was going.
It
I
was
remember
where it
that
was
one,
going.
yeah.
Yeah.
So we're long and Valerie's battery is dying. So
As you can see, I'm not at home. There's a whole lot going on here.
If you have a fast final thought, anyone? No, Liwen, remind everyone where they can find you and your books.
You can find me on my website. It's liwenho.com.
All right. And is your YouTube channel, you're doing free audio on your YouTube channel, is that linked on your website as well?
Yes.
Okay.
I finally got it up there.
Okay, excellent. Because she has some fabulous books up in AI audio for free right there on YouTube as well. You want to check those out for sure. So thank you everyone for joining us at Story Chats. Don't forget to let us know your favorite marriage of convenience story, or why you don't read them. If you don't like them, it's okay. Let us know. Leave us a comment when you're there on YouTube. Please don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell. And we will look forward to seeing you next week. In the meantime, don't forget to fall in love with a good book. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.